heart give you more. Let this heart give you more.
A lot of things get guys into skateboarding. I mean, well, for me, it was nobody else was doing it.
Seeing my sister and my cousin riding banana boards was like my earliest childhood memory, and I was like a little kid, and they were on like banana boards. So, and I definitely remember like riding on my knees. That was like literally the 70s. I have been on a skateboard in the 70s.
A little skateboard with, you know, clay wheels on it and open ball bearings, and you know, it was like, hey, that looks kind of fun. So let's try that.
Skateboarding was, there weren't a whole lot of parts. You had to make, you know, you were pulling roller skates apart. You know, you spent time roller skating as a kid, so everybody had roller skates somewhere, and we would just start making skateboards. You know, our parents were like, well, you know, at least they're not burning the house down, so let's let them go skateboard. If you had a hammer, some nails, a handsaw, and a couple sheets of plywood, you could build you know, a quarter pipe or a half pipe. Let's build a little, you know, ramp. And first the ramp was just a slant that we would go up and down. I mean, it wasn't anything major. Then we built bigger ramps, and then we were building quarter pipes. Then we started building half pipes that were monstrosities out of stolen lumber. And they would come apart, and wheels would go through them. And I think it was more fun building the ramps than it was actually riding on them half the time, because they were dangerous. I mean, you could punch a skateboard through one of these things in a hurry.
We would ride it until the plywood would fail, right? And then you just get a new layer of plywood on it. But it was like you ride it, and then at some point the plywood netted up, and we went through, and the wheels would go through, and we'd go to Kmart, which sold lumber back then, get plywood, hold it on the top of my car. So like, I've got a handout, buddy's got a handout, stuff's trying to fly off, we're trying to, crazy.
Once it really started to accelerate is when the local shops in town started carrying this stuff, because they knew kids were going to buy them, and they knew their parents were going to buy them. Once that happened, then everything just exploded.
skateboarding was starting to pick up back then. I mean, I think I heard a thing that 7-Eleven was selling more skateboard magazines than some other magazines were being sold off their rack. So that's how, you know, popular it was.
We'd go to Bedford's, we'd go to Brits, Sitzmark.
Early on, Bedford Pool Tables had a pretty good skate shop and a team.
There was a shop called Brits Boards at 103rd and Metcalf.
The whole Ellipse team, so there was a guy named Chris Q-Car and his partner Dave Curley.
Chris lived up the street here, up by Platte Woods, right, not far from here, and he had a shop in his basement, and he'd make skateboards, and then from that, they've got retail space over off of Farben Road, and put a shop in there.
So they were like making handmade wood decks. That was their thing at first, but then they went out and got a retail license and started stocking trucks and stuff.
It was a pretty neat little spot. It wasn't a big space. It was just basically a storefront about 15, 20 feet wide, 20 feet deep with a couple of glass counters and a wall with some boards on it. But the back room was a complete setup spot to build skateboards and to put them together and store stuff and stuff like that. So yeah, it was pretty neat.
They brought in Stacy Peralta a couple times to do demos. Pepsi team with the big half pipe.
Then we do muscular dystrophy telethons for Jerry Lewis, and we had Stacy Peralta come out. One time we paid him $500 to come out. He stayed for, I think he stayed for 3 or 4 days, something like that.
And then in '77, they opened Bonsai Pipeline Skate Park at about 63rd Street and I-29 north of the river. The guy that built it himself and went to, he'd been to LA and seen Concrete Wave, which was like the first really cool skate park. And so came back and tried to build himself one and ended up with, you know, something about 1/3 the size and 1/3 the scale, and kicked out and not very well thought out, but still at least some banks and little bowls we could ride. And then I think about a year later, he built a vert bowl, which was like 7.5, maybe 8 feet deep with 3 feet of vert, tight transitions, just hand troweled concrete, kinked in heaven, you know. It's like the deal.
I remember it being just super sketchy. Like if you could ride bonsai, you could ride anything. I remember it being like one of the bowls that being, I don't know if this is my memory or that it's real or what, but that there was chain link like almost right above the edge. I don't think there was coping at bonsai, but just that it was, you know, just like almost like a cage match. You know, if you can roll in and work bonsai, you could ride it, you could skate anything, anywhere.
So the dude has this little prefab building, right? Like you would buy at Lowe's today. Not initially, but maybe the second year it was open, he decided to stock some stuff, which pissed off the guys at Ellipse really bad. He sold stuff cheap, like below what you could get it in the magazines. And he would stock pretty good, you know, it'd be like 7 or 8 decks on the wall and a lot of trucks, a lot of wheels.
It was like this little metal shed that I remember going with my dad, and I'm sure my dad was like, oh, great, what is this? You know, like, all right, we'll get in there, have at it.
I can't remember his real name, but everybody called him Smiley because he always had this big shit-eating grin on his face. So he was Smiley, and nobody called it Bonsai Pipeline, it was Smiley's. We're gonna go skate Smiley's.
Was his first skateboard park in the area. It was privately owned. It wasn't owned by the city. And that's when everything just really exploded. I mean, every kid wanted a skateboard at that point because there was a place to go with it.
Fall of '78, you know, the rumors hit north of the river, and so was so different back then, right? No internet, nobody, hey man, there's a skate park going in at 95th Street.
The city of Lenexa said, yeah, if you want to build it, go for it. We don't have to do anything now. It's kind of like their hands are off of the deal. And eventually we got, you know, Rolling Magic in Lenexa.
Rolling Magic was the '70s paradigm of a skate park. It was the California dream.
He started it as a business. I mean, to him it was, I'm going to capitalize on this. There's nothing here. They actually brought designers in from California. Just watch the building being constructed. We're all just like, wow. here's a concrete dome out in the middle of the prairie.
The thing I remember most about it, the clubhouse was this, they inflated this big rubber balloon, sprayed concrete over the top of it, then deflated the balloon, cut the openings in it, and made this clubhouse with arcade machines and a soda bar and all that, and a pro shop.
Sooner or later, the park opened, and then it was like, okay, now we can really tear it up. I mean, it had everything. Like if it was still around today, it'd be epic. You know, it had a snake run, it had freestyle bank reservoir area, it had 2 keyholes, it had a huge kidney pool, this funky, like domed pro shop with pinball machines and, you know, cute girls working in the snack bar. And I mean, it was shiny. It smelled like urethane and concrete, and I mean, it was full on.
It was heaven. It was an entirely different thing than Bonsai Pipeline, and you just never wanted to leave. We'd get there in the morning, especially those of us that rode for the place. You'd get there in the morning, throw your gear bag against the wall, and not leave until they closed at night. It was nuts.
The pools in it, you know, they were built like pools. They weren't built like the stuff you see now. I mean, they literally, the kiddie pool had coping around it and tiled just like a swimming pool would. So it was just like we'd snuck into somebody's backyard and we're skating in their pool.
It had big, long half pipe, but not like the modern ones, right? This thing's like, I think it was 16 feet in diameter, had like 4 feet of vert. It was tight and fast and long, so you could really, you know, work it.
We couldn't believe it was in Kansas City. We're like, well, this should be in Del Mar or, you know, Big O or someplace in LA.
Lights everywhere for night skating. In every light tower are giant speakers, so there's always music playing.
Everybody helped everybody do everything. So there wasn't any, hey, I'm better than you. No, it's like, here, let me show you how to do this, dude. And we did. That was the kind of attitude of the place. So it was like everybody, you know what, nobody made fun of anybody for not being able to skate. Now, they might make fun of you for crying like a little girl when you fell off. You know, yeah, you'll learn how to do it. It just takes time. I think I started working there when I was 14 years old. It was, you know, they didn't have child labor laws back then. But you'd get off school, I'd go to work at the park. I worked there on Saturdays and Sundays. They had a humongous selection of skateboards for us to choose from. The guy the investor was from California, and he sent a couple out from California to operate it that had run skateboard parks out there for him, and they thought they'd make a go of it. It turned out to be that, you know, people would come from the coast to come and skate here, and then eventually we went out to the coast to see what they had, and it was just the way it worked. Tony Alva came in one time and gave a demo. Alan Gelfand, when he came through, we'd all been skating and we all thought we were pretty badass and we were pretty good at our own part. And then some guy comes in from Florida and he looks at our half pipe and he goes, huh, drops into this thing and just starts tearing it up. You could have seen our tongues hit the floor. This guy pops off one wall. He is 5 feet above the lip of the half pipe and he's in the air. He doesn't even touch a skateboard. He just goes down, back in. And we're like, do that again. It stayed open for quite a while, but eventually there just wasn't enough traffic in there to keep it alive.
That was fun while it lasted, but okay, what happened?
Lived there for that summer, pretty much. And then it was done. Just tragic. And we went back a few times the next year, you know, went over the fence and did the deal. But yeah, dried up.
Oh, it sat there for a while. It had a fence around it, and we would actually jump over the fence to go skate for a while, and that's when they filled it in. They said, okay, that's it. The city came out and they used it to dump excess dirt. So even though it's gone, that park is still there. It's just buried right now.
It's still there under the ground. They broke up the decks and the lips, tossed them in, and filled it. Summer '79 was the big year for Rolling Magic. You know, everything kind of died in like 81, I think. Insurance had gotten out of hand. Skating vanished, at least, you know, and there was like, for guys like me, the guys that skated transition, there wasn't anything here. You know, it was a rough period of time.
You know, my dad and I joke all the time. He's like, I always told you there was no money in skateboarding. It was novelty. It was skateboarding. You know, skateboarding was something you bought at the dime store. You had a yellow board with shitty wheels and, you know, you roll down the street. It wasn't a reality that it was a sport.
It always stayed alive. It just went out of the mainstream. So it wasn't in everybody's view.
Okay, here's clay wheels, and then, you know, now we're on urethane, and we're on 8-inch decks, and with, you know, kicktails, and we start riding, you know, we're riding street like everybody does now.
In Liberty, a gal named Susie had a skate shop called California Connection. And it was a small shop, suited the purpose.
I went to California Connections. I bought a board. It was over here in Liberty. It was in the square. Yeah, and then it moved over there in Gladstone.
I was like going to the California Connections out in Blue Springs, so.
Wow, they did have one out there.
We had friends that worked for her, and that's where we kind of got our stuff, and we were out in Liberty, Missouri.
The first actually brand new skateboard I ever bought was at a place called Graffiti Street, and they had a couple of different locations, and their original locations on 87th and Lackman area. Johnny Dare, he was the team manager at Graffiti Street.
It was just a cool, typical, kind of like had more of like a hangout vibe, which was cool because that's like the, you know, that's the cool thing about skate shops now, especially you can just go there, hang out.
By the time I was probably 14 or 15, Graffiti Street was gone.
We had a local shop over here at 95th and Null that had skateboard parts for a while.
There was a shop that opened up here in Overland Park that was called You Animal You, which I ended up working there for a very short period of time.
It was kind of slow in the early 80s, but then in the mid 80s, it was really starting to take off, and you would see a lot more kids skateboarding, and then there was a lot of advertising, and it just started to pick up, and it's like all other things. When that fad gets started, it starts rolling, and the kids went crazy.
For many years, that became like my home. I mean, anytime I had any little bit of money, it was always trying to hustle enough money to get a board or get some shoes or a new t-shirt or whatever it was that you needed. And it was You Animal You was always the first stop.
It's kind of set up like this whole Hawaiian vibe, like, you know, fake palm trees and tikis, and
There was a parrot cage in the middle of the place, and there was, you know, all the typical skate and surf brands of clothes: Vision Streetwear, Life's a Beach, Billabong, Stussy, Massimo. And then there was just like almost like a takeout window in the back of the store, and you would walk up to it like you were gonna place your order. You would order a deck. It wasn't like it is now where there was like, you know, one-offs and like 17 different graphics at any one time. I mean, Tony Hawk had his board, Lance Mountain had his board, Gator had, you know, a graphic, Gons had a graphic.
And it was like he had a separate room with a big window and a counter, and you'd go up there and, yeah, can I check out the new such and such, and he'd hand it to you. And
I mean, they sold Airwalks, you know, which they were one of the first, you know, dealers to have like just Vans and Airwalks and some of the basic skate shoes that, you know, everybody was after.
And then the shoe room, that was always the coolest thing too, because, man, I was obsessed with Vans and skate shoes in general. So you'd go in there and whatever new was there, and it was just so exciting.
They also had a team, and they would have like, I don't know, team practice on Saturdays.
But we're really, if you just showed up every week, you made the team kind of thing. Every week we would have practice, and it was whatever the same time, and it was a Shawnee Mission East in the parking lot, because one of the guys, Andy, his mom was like the team manager,
and she was in charge of the ramps and the trailer that had all the ramps and the box and everything. So many people would come through, like really good people, guys like Andy Brayman and Travis Noe, Nate Miller, and a lot of those guys would show up and they would just rip it up.
He was a good guy. He definitely was trying to help skateboarding, and you know, he was very fair, and it's good for the scene out here.
I mean, he had a lot of demos. I remember there was a Sims demo, and at the time, Steve Rocco skated for Sims in some capacity. I don't know. I know he had a pro model. I remember Dogtown did a demo, and Wade Spayer, JJ Rogers. Wade Spayer was so good, and that was really cool to get to see him.
Bones Brigade. They actually came to town and did a demo just down the road at Skateland or Skate World, the roller skate rink, and they had the jankiest half pipe. Like there was a trailer, like a semi-trailer that folded out. I remember like Cab was there, I'm pretty sure, and like Tony Hawk was there.
Starting off, we didn't really have spots. The spots were in front of my house, in front of Scott Moot's house, in front of Randy Griffin's house. We took plywood and threw them over picnic table benches and threw a car tire underneath to keep the board from flexing and just launched off of it.
Yeah, there was a lot of construction in the area at the time, so that's pretty much what we would do. Large construction sites, find some 2x4s, some piping, and you know, build some what we called rail slide bars. Back in the day, we would just basically build a box with some PVC on top.
You know, we had a quarter pipe at a friend's house, and another friend had a quarter pipe that we could skate very occasionally. It was back in the kick turn days, you know. Trying to get up higher than halfway was badass for us. Dan Sharp had a ramp over off, say, 99th and Blue Jacket over by Oak Park Mall. And we were able to get in right over there. Back then it was still a very locals only kind of scene, so it's kind of hard to get in.
Andy Brayman, he used to skate there. He was like a Casey legend. Dude ripped. Probably still does if he still skates.
Late 80s, street was blowing up. The whole street style scene, you know, Sacto, that video came out, and everybody was building quarter pipes and learning how to ollie forwards, and you know, it started progressing at that point. We were still very much stuck in our own little vert scene. It's always been a very difficult time trying to be a vert rider in Kansas City since beginning. You know, ramps came, ramps went. I was always searching for another one.
And it seemed like it was getting away from the vert ramp, so it was more accessible. In '88, right when I was 11, there were a shit ton of skateboarders. Like everybody, like kind of how you see it now. Something else fucking got all the little kids' attention, and skateboarding kind of fell under. Thank God.
We remembered seeing like the kids that were a grade ahead of us, but by the time we were starting to get into it, it was dead. Those guys had all stopped. They were making fun of us because we did it. You know, skate or die and all that good stuff.
And the 90s happened. Skateboarding dropped off like a lead weight, just poof, kind of gone.
That was like when skateboarding sucked, and like skateboarding, like the boom of the 80s when it was cool in California was dead, and skateboarding just turned lame.
I think You Animal You started selling pets. They were like, fuck it, we got the name. The vert boom was dead, neon was dead, fuck it. Like, and skateboarding became a counterculture again.
Especially in this early 90 period, that was when all those tiny wheels came out, boards were getting skinnier, you'd show up to spots and people would vibe you. Like there was definitely like this huge influx of like hip hop in skateboarding.
For one, the wheels were like this big, and pants were giant, and I mean, I get it. It was like skateboarding's like teen rebellion age, you know? In the 90s, it was like, if you did like a triple pressure flip body varial and like it hit the ground 4 times and like hit you with a shim, but you somehow kind of landed on it, it was like a make. Like, you know, style like didn't matter in the 90s, it seemed like.
It just wasn't as fun anymore. Everyone was skating really slow, trying to do all these like super technical tricks. And it was kind of gross for a little bit.
But back then there was like definitely a vibe going, like a lot of vibing, a lot of like 816, 913 kind of thing. Like that's whenever I was first exposed to like different crews.
Probably what happened in Kansas City back then is Overland Park just started growing or whatever. Like Johnson County was born. And we're like, well, what the fuck is this shit? You live in Kansas City, you live in Kansas City. What's this fucking Leawood shit? What's this Overland Park? Where's that?
We started going to Loma Vista Hardware because it was really close to my grandparents' house. And there was stuff to skate in the shopping center, in Loma Vista Shopping Center.
Loma Vista was cool. The owner, Todd, his dad had a hardware store. That's why it was called Loma Vista Hardware at first, because it was a skate shop in the middle of an operating hardware store. So you could go with your dad and he could buy a garden hose and you could get a new set of wheels.
This guy, Todd, his parents owned this hardware store. And initially they just had one little aisle in the hardware store and had boards. And the first thing I heard about it was that people that I knew would go in there and steal skateboards.
Loma Vista.
We used to just gaff shit from there. Like, that place would get so stole. Like, Sean Boyles.
Sean Boyles. You ever heard of that name? That guy was sponsored by Loma Vista, and Loma Vista didn't know it.
We became close with Todd and kind of knew him a lot just from going in and out of there. But it was always interesting because, you know, he had a bunch of stuff, but he didn't have quite the knowledge of skateboarding. But you could see that there was some sense that he really wanted to be in the industry. So we'd always talk to you about everything, and that's basically how they learned.
He did demos too, like some pretty cool ones, and he got involved in a really cool way. So that became a really legit, like, cool skate shop. And then he eventually, the hardware store closed. His parents closed the hardware store, so he reopened in Westport. Did that for quite a while, and it was a cool store too.
The first big demo I ever went to was at Loma Vista Hardware with Tony Hawk, and it was I was so stoked that he brought Tony Hawk in.
Powell demo, and my friends and I built all the ramps for it.
You know, he had deals, like buy 10 boards, get one free or something, buy 12, I think it was, get one free, something like that.
You know, we figured out what was going on with Loma Vista was that Loma Vista was calling all the suppliers really in the skate industry at the time and saying, hey, what do you guys got that you're willing to ditch for cheap? Like, I'll buy all of it. Like, whatever you've got sitting around that, you know, isn't really moving for you.
You know, he moved it around a few times and, you know, was in Westport there at the end, and unfortunately that's another casualty like most skate shops. You know, they're around for a while, but don't quite make it.
So Raytown had a skate shop. I don't know when they opened, but they were on Blue Ridge Drive, I think.
It was like a craft store. And they started, their son skated. So they started putting, you know, they'd carry a few boards in the back. And they moved across 350. Pretty sure it was a closed down gas station. That one was, I think, a lot bigger. And on the side and in the back, they had all these ramps and they would do contests and stuff like that. Yeah, Mr. and Mrs. K, that was the couple that had the Raytown skate shop. And definitely always looking out for the kids and doing events, contests. You know, of course, we're lurking in there 24/7, and they were just cool.
Nick was always up there. Joe Jackson would skate there. Jeremy Patton skated there a lot with him. Brian Waldrum, Brian Minnick.
Dan Askew and Jason Rupineski, Red-Eyed Rube, always worked at Raytown Skate Shop. If you went to Raytown Skate Shop, you went out there to see Dan and Jason, pick up the new 411, skate the ramp for a little bit, check out the decks, you know, whatever, dude.
So yeah, I started going there a lot, and the owner was like, hey, I heard you know how to build ramps. We're gonna move down the street, and we have a really deep basement, and we want to put a ramp in there. I'm like, yeah, cool, let's check it out. So he drives me down there, and it's this tiny little like freestanding shack of a building. And I'm like looking at it like, yeah, right, there's a basement in here. Like, there's no way a ramp's gonna fit in this little place, you know? Sure enough, we open this door and there's like a 32-foot deep basement. So it had these little like doors on the front of the building, had like a kind of a little porch area. And these little doors opened up into smaller rooms that were connected to the basement. So we're like, you know, throwing 2x4s down in this room and then like pushing them through the little hole in the wall that whoever was the previous tenant tried to put a little hole in the wall, but it was only like that big. So we're like feeding 2x4s through there and stacking everything and bringing plywood down the staircase.
That was fun. The ramp down the basement. The smell was a little bad, but it was a lot of fun. Twisted a couple ankles there.
Knew them ever since I was a little kid. You know, I knew Dan for sure. He would skate at this bank by the movie theater in Lee Summit. And when I was a real little kid, I saw him skating there. And didn't know his name, but I saw him years later and was like, that was the dude. Like, that was the dude that was killing it.
I was skating at Barney, and I was skating with these dudes, and these two rollerbladers showed up, and they had gotten together with a pro skateboarder, and they were gonna open up a shop. And they kind of showed up at Barney and just like wanted to be our friends. And they were like, you know, we're gonna hook you guys up, we're bringing in this. We got Jesse Martinez is backing us. Like, whoa, like these two dudes and bringing up Jesse Martinez. Like, well, all right then.
My friend from high school and college, Mike Vassos, was living in California. Mike calls me and says, hey, I met this dude, and he's a pro skater. He's like, we need to bring this to Kansas City. This stuff needs to be going on in Kansas City. So Mike says, hey, I'm coming back into town. I want to hang out, and let's talk about this. We match funds, and we come up with this idea that, hey, there's this location in South Kansas City off 107th and Row. It's near a bike path. Maybe we could sell mountain bike accessories, maybe BMX stuff, rollerblades, skateboards.
He goes, hey man, I want to start a shop. I just need you to give it clout, give it a jump start, get all the right product, make the shop look bitchin'. I was like, yeah, let's do it, man. I made sure that shop had the best shit and the cheapest prices that anybody could get it for.
Well, Mike and Drew, Mike Vassos, Drew Dietrich, definitely good dudes. Definitely not like ever good skateboarders, but they were into it.
Yeah, like a month later, sure enough, like, hey, there's this new place, Let It Ride, over on 107th and Row. I was like, oh yeah, I remember those guys talking about that. That's cool.
We started investigating the Raytown skate shop and found out, you know, hey, these are the guys that work there. A lot of those guys were coming around and skating with a lot of the people that were skating for us or around Let It Ride. And we found out they had an indoor ramp.
The shop I worked at, Raytown Skate Shop, they just got to a point to where, I mean, like I mentioned, their kid wasn't even skating anymore. And they really were giving a lot to the scene and, you know, to us kids or whatever. We weren't getting anything out of it. I mean, skateboarding was dead, you know. Like, I think they were getting ready to retire. They just didn't want to deal with it anymore.
So we started talking to the owner of Raytown Skate Shop and saying, hey, you know, we're really in competition with each other at this point. We offered to them, instead of, you know, continuing to just compete against each other and making it harder for each other to make money, to say, hey, you know, why don't you sell us your shop? Because we want to redo that ramp that's in your basement, and, you know, we want to actually operate your store in its existence where it is. You know, we're not trying to just close your doors, but we want to have that ramp, and, you know, what do you say? So after a while, not too long, they considered it, and they came back to us and said, yeah, we'll sell.
Miss K, you know, her son skated, that's why she opened it. She had it for like 10 years or whatever. Let It Ride wanted to buy it, so she sold it. And they kept Dan and Jason on.
Yeah, we talked to the owners, like, yeah, do we still have jobs, or, you know, what's the story? And like, yeah, we want you to work for us. And so it's kind of like, it's kind of still was Raytown Skate Shop. Like, he and Jason and I still worked there, but they fully like renovated the place.
We just want to rebuild that ramp downstairs, and we want to get to know a little bit more about ramp skating. I mean, all we knew so far was, you know, it was all about curbs, manual pads, you know, finding a set of stairs or something like that. But Nick Owens was another one that had figured out, you know, was pretty good at riding ramp. So we took those guys downstairs and said, hey, what does this need? And so we said, hey, this ramp's too tight as it is. So we cut the stairs out, rerouted the stairs to the top deck of the ramp, and widened that side of the ramp, and just rebuilt the whole thing. And, you know, operated as, hey, the only public accessible skate ramp in Kansas City. People had private ramps, but there really wasn't anywhere that you could go and just say, hey, I want a membership, I want to come while you guys are open, and I want to skate.
Yeah, it was all of a sudden like, Mrs. K's gone and Let It Ride is there, and I'm like, that's weird. It just seemed real weird, but at the time.
They definitely did good for the skate scene, and by that I mean like have demos. Like if you're a good skate shop, that should be part of your responsibilities, like bring pros.
Barbarians at the gate. That was so rad. We got to hang out with him and it was have a barbecue at a buddy's house. Super fun. The Menace demo and partying with those dudes.
Steve Olson and Josh Beagle. I think Frank Hirata was there, a few other guys. You know, I was 18 and it was really cool to be able to see some of that kind of stuff come to Kansas City.
You know, they had a bunch of demos, like kind of right off the bat too. A Foundation demo, it was like a World demo, but of course with World you got some people from Menace, and like Kareem was there, and I think LeVar McBride maybe, Mullen.
Girl team came out, a few riders from Chocolate with them. People really were starting to recognize that something was going on in skateboarding, and, you know, Kansas City was, you know, flocking to see what it was all about.
That was also the year that Flip moved here from England, and they did the demo at Parkville. There was just like this concrete foundation slab that never got built in anything. It was supposed to be who knows what, but it sat there for a long time. People started putting ramps there and stuff.
I remember there was 2 wedge ramps, and Rune, I think I got bored or something, but he just kept pushing them further and further apart and just blasting them. It's like, oh, he's not gonna make it. He made it every time. And then Tom Penny, of course, just the magician of flat ground, just basic skating. It still made it look magical. It was awesome.
I saw that demo in one of these flip videos where I did a backside kickflip, but Tom Penny did a switch backside kickflip. I'm like, dude.
It was cool. It was definitely one of the coolest things that Let It Ride did. Like, as many people love to hate on Let It Ride, like, they brought the best skaters to town and like did cool shit like that. Like the blind demo, I remember was sick because Gideon Choi was there and Ronnie Kreger was there, and they showed up early, and they like helped us build stuff. Like we were like, oh crap, you're here. Like we're in the process of like, hell yeah. So they just like grabbed a hammer and like helped us build stuff.
You know, Let It Ride did try to put it back to the skateboard community. You know, it wasn't just about, hey, Let It Ride was sitting there trying to figure out how to make the most money the fastest. No. Let It Ride was trying to figure out how to bring skateboarding to the forefront so that everybody that was a skater could enjoy it, you know, and it wasn't being provided.
You should thank Let It Ride for getting these people here. Paying their demo, food, hotel, just for you guys.
You know, Jesse really wasn't able to stay in Kansas City with us very much. It just kind of came to a point where we kind of had to make a decision to say, hey, Jesse, either you're in, or, you know, do you want us to pay you for, you know, your percentage of the shop?
I go, hey man, you know what, you guys do your thing, man. You know, and I remember him saying, hey, you know, I said, maybe I shouldn't even be a legal part of it, but I'll always help you guys out. I remember telling Mike that, don't worry about it, you know? It was more like, yeah, you guys have earned what you did. Enjoy it. Even after I was supposedly left the shop, my name was still connected to it. And I didn't mind. When people would ask me now and then, hey man, are you the shop owner? Yeah, that's my shop. I'm out there with Drew and Mike. And I'd always back it up no matter what.
Shortly after that, I had another friend of mine from college and high school, John Niswonger, and we got to talking to him, and he had moved to Fort Collins, Colorado.
Got a call from Mike and Drew, which I was good friends with them from high school, and they had opened the shop in Overland Park, and they said, hey dude, we're gonna open one in Lawrence. See if you wanted to move back and help us run it. Like, I'll move back, but I definitely want to go to the Lawrence store because I've lived in Kansas City, kind of over it. Lawrence is a cool town. Moved to Kansas City, lived with Mike, and me and Drew would kind of drive up to Lawrence every day and get the shop built. And then we opened it, and I kind of lived in the back of the shop for about a month and a half until I found an apartment to rent. So that was interesting, just folding out the futon in the back. And then I would kind of switch off with Drew and Mike. They'd come up a day, and we'd kind of swap, and then they kind of got, I don't know, sick of doing the commute, or I don't know. I just ended up pretty much just me running it, and of course it was their store for several years, and then I eventually bought it out.
There's an iffy feeling about them, and I remember him telling my boy Chris Benge, like, if you don't get with the program, you'll get cut.
Saying, oh, we're gonna banish you from Kansas City skateboard scene because you owe us money for a deck. Because once he said that shit to me, like about banishing me from, like, I'm like, oh yeah, like your dork ass is gonna tell all my friends not to be my friends, and I'm gonna be banished.
But it was just like, we didn't like him anymore. And then in Midtown, my buddy who got a job at the head shop, it was called Zowie. And he's like, well, let's bring up 816 shit so we can go against Let It Ride. You know, instead of being like Team Zowie, or nobody's gonna like that name Zowie. You know, Zowie's a bong shop, but if we bring our team in, you know, 816, me and Dillon, Chris Benge, Ryan Minnick, like we're 816 to the bone. We'll just call it 816 and start our own thing, you know, doing it for the skaters.
816 is Dillon Manske and Tom Wyker, like 100%. It's those two guys.
It was Zowie, but it was an 816 shop. It was our hub. Dillon and Tom Wyker, Westport, that was it, man.
I remember being hated on a lot because, like, we were 913, you know, like, oh, they're in Overland Park, and like the Zowie thing. I'm like, again, the weird vibes in skateboarding back then. Just fuck off. Like, I live here in Johnson County. Like, sorry.
We wanted to divide. Like, you guys can wear your fresh gear and do all that shit all you want, but Missouri is ours.
We clicked up with our crews, which we had a lot of friends on that end, and we're from Kansas City. Those guys, in our opinion, were outsiders no matter what. And the Kansas crews clicked up with them because that's what they knew. That's all they knew, because Graffiti Street sucked, New Animal U sucked, Let It Ride was the thing. I roll up and pop a trick they were trying first try because I knew I could. But they do the same to me sometimes too. It's like, yeah, it was fun.
It's definitely like, I don't know if you'd say competition or hate or anything, but just like, it was just weird, you know, like certain dudes would shop at Zowie and certain dudes, like we were more like the clean cut Johnson County types, I guess.
It was all pretty much just a big joke. I definitely had a lot to do with it. We started a whole bunch of crap like 816 and Let It Die, and we were just a bunch of young shit-talking kids, but at the same time we would go skate with those guys, and they were our good friends, and we would say it to their faces. It wasn't like we were hiding it or anything.
Like, I apologize because I was mean to them, and I love all those dudes. I'm older now, and fucking, we're all human, but we were pissed back then.
Let it ride.
Let It Ride Skate in the Snow with locations in Overland Park, Raytown, and Lawrence. Let It Ride offers the best in skateboards, snowboards, clothing and fashion accessories, and everything else relevant to happiness. Featuring World Industries, Blind, Menace, 101, Foundation, Toy Machine, Alien Workshop, Hookups, Birdhouse, Drawers, Shorties, DC Shoes, Etnies, Ducks, and Airwalk. Resist all sloppy imitations and accept Let It Ride as your access to the finest quality skate and snow products available. Let It Ride.
So then the Raytown shop really was struggling to hold its own in terms of making enough money to justify keeping the employees and keeping the extra inventory. And now that we had hired Dan Askew and Nick Owens, and those guys were looking for more opportunity and than we really had to offer. And we said, hey, we're thinking North Kansas City now. Let's, look at what we could do out there.
At that point, I was managing the store, doing all the buying, payroll, managing the employees, making the schedule. Yeah, Drew was just like, hey, you've kind of reached your max over here. What do you think about doing a franchise store or whatever? And, talked to Nick about it. And, yeah, Pleasant Valley opened, and it was the only bar in Kansas City. So we're like, let's go up north. That's where the skate park is. That's where we should be or whatever.
Dan did the same thing I did, where he ran the store up in North Kansas City. And then we had signed a contract with Mike and Drew to where we pay him kind of a royalty thing for so many years. And then after that, we were kind of on our own.
We'll front all the product for the store, get it up and running, and what do you say you guys purchase it as a franchise? We said, hey, we're going to do this shop. I mean, Let It Ride's going there. It's just a matter if you want the opportunity to have more.
It came time. We had a lease in hand. Nick was working at Hy-Vee still on Lee Summit. We showed up to his work and like, all right, here's the lease. He's like, oh, we're really doing this, huh? Like, all right. I mean, we kind of knew what we were doing, but not really, we're just going for it. I mean, we started the shop on lines of credit, we didn't have any savings or anything like that.
Then I heard they were like branching off from and starting their own shit, and we were probably scared. We were like, oh, fuck. Damn it, they're gonna kill it, because obviously Dan and Nick got their shit together. We were like intimidated by them.
It was at by Metro North Mall. It was at the corner of Oak and Berry. And they were rad. I remember going and just checking it out. They just had a rad business model. And then he would do the high ollie contest, and they were just two things, for the community, and it was rad.
It was a Let It Ride franchise. We paid to use their name, paid them a percentage of our sales. With those things, we were supposed to get a lot of things in return that didn't happen. So right away, we were kind of soured on the whole deal. I mean, that's one of the reasons why the shop opened with no product, because they were supposed to supply the product, because we gave all the money we had to use their name. I mean, especially there towards the end, like those guys weren't really connected as much to the skate scene.
We were having some pretty difficult struggles at Let It Ride as far as me and my partner, Mike. My partner, Mike, his lifestyle outside of work was changing quite a bit, and he was married at the time with a new young baby girl, and it seemed like his marriage was real on the rocks, and he wasn't in town as much. He started spending a lot of time in California again, and he just wasn't focused on the business anymore. I was really stressing out to try and keep the various locations going and trying to keep everything held together with Mike still drawing a salary, kind of being distracted from his focus. His focus really wasn't on the shop anymore.
We didn't want to go down with the ship because the writing was on the wall. Like these guys hate each other. Where's this going? We're not really benefiting from this. Got to the point to where we were doing more for the name that we paid to use and we're continued to pay to use than they were doing. We were lining up all these, board months sales specials with companies and, doing some demos and stuff like that. I don't know. It was just time to go out on our own.
Just being blindsided, not realizing that, the contract we had put into place for renegotiation was literally meant for their advantage. Hey, look, we don't want you to feel like, hey, you signed on the dotted line and you're in for 5 or 7 or, you know, any longer, you know, period of time, and then come back to the table with a better understanding of, hey, what are you really into? What's it going to take? Everything I had was based on let it ride. I mean, I didn't have a whole lot of, you know, other opportunities just waiting around the corner for me. It was really pretty much, hey, all my eggs are in this basket right now. And we came to the table, and Dan and Adrian just pretty much looked me in the eyes and said, here's the deal on this contract. We're going to keep the stores. We're just going to change the name. And we're not going to be a part of any kind of a franchise anymore.
Yeah, I think that's what Dan and those guys did. Their contract ran out, and it's like, we're just going to start over and just do our own complete thing, new thing.
But as frustrated as I was and as blindsided as I was, you know, and you realize business is business, and I did know, you know, I was like, hey, I understand, you know, things maybe between my partnership with Mike and what have you, you know, it looks a little rocky right now, but, you know, don't you dance with the one that brought you? I mean, don't you, you know, come on, where's your loyalty to, you know, the home team? It just wasn't there, and it really just, I mean, it shocked me. But I had to let it go. Wasn't anything I could do about it.
I mean, it was the same shop, it was the same location, it was the same owners, everything was the same. It's just the, you know, the face of it changed or whatever, the name changed.
I remember it was a nice shop, and we would go there to set up boards or whatever, and then, but I do remember inside the shop, Dan had little transition quarter pipes along, like small, like little, like 1 foot high, like maybe like 2 feet high quarter pipes. It's pretty cool.
We had one person on the team, and that was Ryan Pierce, who I had met when I worked at Raytown Skate Shop. When he came in to skate the mini ramp with his brother, Ryan was 9 and Derek was, I think, 11.
Ryan Pierce was like the first one on, and he still is like the most legendary skater in Kansas City.
But yeah, he was friends with JW and Arthur. So it was all Northland kids at first because we were in the Northland. You know, that's what we're concentrating on.
Mike Webb, Zale, Max, Justin Hackle.
It was super organic the way it just happened because, I mean, like I mentioned, we were already skating with these people anyway. You know, we were all friends or whatever. Then we opened the OP shop, and at that point, that's when we started considering other people that weren't in the Northland, even though like Max and Hackle, they were Johnson County.
And then the owners, there was a couple, a husband and a wife, and they got a divorce. And the husband the woman got the shop, the Zowie, and the husband, Mike, you know, he was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Tom, you want to open up a skate shop together? Like, let's do it, dude. Obviously, we can call it 816. Zowie was still going to be around, and they had all the dealers and everything, and you know, we didn't know what to do. It seemed like we couldn't open up in Midtown. So, looking through the paper one day, it said Lee Summit, Missouri is the biggest growing suburb in Missouri, or city or something. Like, holy shit, let's go there and make a shit ton of money. And 6 months into it, the owner was like, Tom, I want to sell you my part of the shop because there is no money in skating and shit. And so he sold it to me. And we got a lot of good kids. We met cool kids by going out to Lee Summit. It was cool. Josh White, Kep Tyshawn. He would come to the shop every day talking shit and just, dude, he was like one of us, you know what I mean?
Trying to tag along, trying his hardest to keep up pushing with us, and trying to skate the spot so we could skate within his limits. He'd be like the kid, like pop shoving slabs or heel flipping some little gap and like trying to get like our attention.
He was good. By the time I met him, he could already like heel flip and kick flip gaps and stuff like that. And he would see other people skating handrails and he would talk about that, like really wanting to do that and stuff.
But Josh, I just didn't know like at first because he was so talented and so young. You know, he was like 13 and everybody came in the shop like, dude, you got to put Josh White on the team. And it's like, I don't got to do shit, dude. You know what I mean? He was fucking on it. And dude, just started winning contests. He went to the bands, Warped Tour, fucking won this contest, won that. Josh just blew up, man.
That's when I saw Jay and Arthur and RP and all those guys just progress like crazy.
Probably Dillon got a job at the Bong shop in 96 to 2006. He got in 96, got me in there in like 97. We stayed in Midtown until 2003. And we opened up in Lee Summit September of 03. And I kept it going until like May of 06.
I started realizing, hey, with them now peeling out, with the Raytown skate shop closed, and with the Lawrence skate shop kind of struggling at that time. And so I just kind of saw it as, hey man, we're in this fairly big square footage skate shop, you know, the 95th store. I'm going to need to look for a smaller store. I'm going to have to start figuring out how to cut back and, you know, how to renegotiate everything. And Mike really wasn't around much at that stage. And so I started looking for buyers. We're not going to make it. So anyways, I ended up finding somebody to sell that final shop to. And, you know, Dillon had been working for me for a while as a manager. And, you know, he stuck it pretty much out there to the end. You know, it was a mutual friend of ours that ended up buying the shop and changing the name. And he ended up selling the shop again to somebody else. But that's kind of where it all ended. You know, Let It Ride shut the doors.
So it was Let It Ride. That was the down south shop. And it turned into Artificial, which was like backed by this dude that no one really knew, you know, but Dillon Lyon ran it.
And there was another store called Imperial. Basically just this existing store that still had life, still had everything set up, still running off of the solid foundation that was built out there, the customer base.
Artificial, you know, throughout the years, it was kind of in a weird strip mall spot that like wasn't doing, like the whole strip mall like wasn't really doing that well.
And I started working at Snow Creek doing snowboard events, stuff like that for them. And we needed to find a sponsor to get some prizes. I didn't want to go to Zoomies or anything. And I just heard about this store, this new snowboard shop that started called Ride Forever. I think my initial reaction was it was kind of a cheesy thing and it was whatever. But they were willing to like sponsor this event, showed a lot of love. I don't know, it sparked a good memory, and I hit them up after the snowboard season was over and was like, you know, do you have any openings, you know? And then the owner told me that they were gonna sell the store because it had been open a year and they didn't really know what they were doing. And I was like, well, let me work for free for 6 months and let me see if I can turn it around. And I did.
I'm not sure when they actually moved into that arena spot, but Ride Forever kind of moved over there, and now they have snowboard stuff and everything down low and then a full skate shop upstairs. Convenience-wise for all those guys in Overland Park, it was just kind of easier to go there.
Sean Malto, what was he like? What did I remember him like? Well, he was the little kid at the skate park that was like obviously way better than everybody his age. Like he was advanced. And I feel like, of course he had the talent, but also because he had like two older brothers like that shredded. And so that's all he knew. Like, oh, well, I have to get up to par to them.
The Maltos started coming in to Escapist. It's probably around 02-ish, I think. So yeah, the whole family would come up. Chris, Justin, Sean, his parents, and you know, they're all super nice, friendly, and just kind of got to know them really well because they'd come in pretty often.
When I went to the skate shop, it would be like a 3-hour event. Like, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna sit, I'm gonna talk to Adrian, I'm gonna talk to Dan, I'm gonna look at magazines. Those dudes are really cool. They'd set out like 7 different boards, and I'd look at them and be like, which one would I want?
I remember like footage of like the little Malto, like destroying it at like a demo, and people were like, who's this kid? And like, just you wait. He might be this big, but he did just backlip that handrail and like impress like pros, and like, yeah, he's going somewhere.
It's funny, my first contest I ever skated was at North Park, Pleasant Valley. And that was my first real like, all right, I'm gonna go out and like skate this thing. I was wearing a helmet. Like, my mom and grandma and grandpa like brought their lawn chairs and were sitting there. I remember just seeing like everybody, like Wyker was there, Dan Askew, everybody. I think that was my first time like actually seeing like the locals. I was like, whoa, man, these dudes are crushing it, because I was like always in my own little world in Leavenworth, and I stepped out and I was like, damn, these dudes are awesome. And I skated the contest, whatever, and I actually made it into the second round, which went to Lawrence Park. The second round was at Lawrence Park, and Dan won. So my first contest ever, I lost to Dan Askew.
I think that's the first time I saw Malto, and I was like, dude, this little kid, he kills it.
We were talking to Nick, like, hey, let's put him on the team or whatever, see if he wants to skate for Escapist. And our friend Zach, who owned a shop, Lovely, asked him after that contest if he wanted to ride for Lovely. So just barely got in there and beat us to the punch.
And then I remember, so I got like kind of sponsored by Lovely, kind of, you know, like they gave me a t-shirt and like came up, and like I went to their store, and like I was super grateful for everything. When Zach gave me the shirt and like told me to come by the shop was in the crossroads, and it was literally like a hole in the wall, like little spot. But it was sick, like it had like a couple, you know, it had like what it could fit in, seriously like a 12 by 12 store. It was so small.
Sean Malto was at the shop skating out front. Adam Brower goes, Zach, how much money do you have in your bank account right now? And I was like, I don't know, not very much, you know, like $1,200 or something. And he was like, I'll watch the shop, go to the bank, take out every penny that you have, and when his parents come to pick him up, give it to them, because that right there is a superstar.
But I just remembered I was skating a mini ramp with Matt Hensley and Dan Askew at Warped Tour.
So here we are, I'm skating the mini ramp. No one, I don't know why no one's skating the mini ramp, but it's me, Matt Hensley, and Malto.
And I was sitting there, and me and Dan were on the deck, and I remember just being like, dude, I kind of just want to like hang out with you guys. Like, you know, like Escapist was it, you know, like I felt like when it started and it was coming up, it was like, that is the premier shop.
Like Sean comes up to me and he's like, I want to ride for Escapist. And I was like, well, that's cool, because we actually want you to ride for Escapist. You know, we were going to ask you, but, you know, you got on Lovely, and if you want to talk to Zach and kind of make it right with him, like, we're down, but we don't want to, you know, step on his toes or whatever. We're friends with Zach. And he's like, okay. And it's crazy to think about. I mean, he's 12, but he was always just real mature for his age. Next thing you know, I guess, you know, he works out with Zach, whatever, and he's on Escapist.
And like everyone was cool with it, and like I was so little, like it didn't even matter. I was like, I just want to ride for Escapist. He was like, all right, man, like do your thing. You know, Escapist used to always be, they had one up north by Pleasant Valley. They had one down south, Overland Park. There's nothing really centrally located in the city. And I remember when Dan found the spot, I was just like, dude, it's like, I got the spot, like it's looking really good. Like, I think it's gonna go down. When Escapists opened up downtown, that probably like growing the skate scene or really blowing it up, I feel like that like was such a key part of it. And no one really even knew. I mean, Dan might have known what he wanted to do, but you know, that opened up demos being opened up at like Penn Valley. It opened up people coming in for art shows and doing that stuff on the other side of it, you know, like Lance Mountain, Gons.
In my eyes, it was like, okay, that's a legit shop and it's not gonna go anywhere like anytime soon. I know they've moved around and they've had some different areas open up and close, but it's great to see just the heart that they have into it.
Prior to, you know, Malto turning pro, I mean, there was people that knew about KC. I mean, Jamie Thomas, we've been doing demos with him, like Zero and Fallen, since like 2000, 2001, something like that. You know, a lot of pros had some clips from Kansas City in their videos, but most people watching those videos probably don't know where it's at. But yeah, Malto definitely put it on the map. I mean, and he blew up so quickly, everyone had to pay attention. Like, oh man, who's this kid? And what, he lives in Kansas City? Like, he still lives there? He didn't move to Cali? Like, you know, and then next thing you know, he's like putting out videos with Kansas City footage, and then you get more pros wanting to come through.
To speak for the scene, like, you know, obviously Sean Malto's had a super big influence, and you know, I think he's a very positive person to showcase Kansas City everywhere he goes or anything like that. And I've told him that before. It's like he's like the perfect person if this is going to happen to just because he's so easygoing.
In the distance, and I see you. I don't know if I need you. Maybe this is the moment. Only time will tell.
You know, sponsored with companies and having a little more control on where we're going or what trips, you know, and I'd take people here. Everyone was always blown away by the spots. And I never realized that until, you know, you bring people, because you get so used to the spots and you get so familiar with it, and you're like, man, I want to like go to another city and skate. And then you bring people here and they're like, dude, you have so many spots and they're all rad, and then like nothing's really that big of a bust. And wow, I mean, this city actually is really cool and there is a lot of stuff to skate.
Well, I started coming out here skating because, I don't know, I feel like it was a bigger skate scene than Oklahoma had at the time. I was like, man, there's like so many spots out here, like way more than Tulsa and, you know, like that area.
Barney Ellis Plaza, I mean, it's just iconic. It was, you know, you get a trick at Barney, you're psyched because it looks cool, like it's so embedded in the history of like skating in Kansas City, and it's a super big bust too. Like you got to get in and out. You can like security's there quick, so when you get something there, like, you know, like someone got it quick and it was hard, or it might have took multiple times going.
Yeah, I mean, we'd pretty much have like a route. We'd drive down there. We'd start at Barney because, you know, you have either 5 minutes or 30 minutes. So we'd skate as long as we could at Barney. Security would show up, and then we'd kind of like make our little rounds or whatever.
Barney Ellis Plaza.
Dude, we were start.
That's where you start.
We started Barney.
Channel 9.
Channel 9.
Metal Trees.
Metal Trees.
there's so much in that plaza, the Barney Plaza, that you can do the typical, like, oh, there's a 5 stair, there's 8 stair, there's 10 stairs, a slant, like, just free range at that spot. Like, you can skate stuff like a manual, you can skate stuff like going the opposite direction that you would think, and there's so many little cutty things in that plaza that anybody can skate there. And you see people skate it differently, and it's like, oh, that was tight.
Every day, 4:30 at 3 stair, meet up there at Barney and skate. We would just skate the 3 all day, up, down, do a trick in the middle, up, down. And then, you know, like, go towards the front, and that's where you get kicked out. Because I guess they didn't have cameras in the back then. So we would skate back there for hours, and then, like, you want to take a trick to the big slant, all right, you're busted.
We've always had the run-ins. At Barney House Plaza has always been, that's been the spot. And you get kicked out, because you're going to get kicked out. That was what it was like. That was part of it. You're going to get kicked out, go skate there, get kicked out, go around, come back, get kicked out again.
There's a lot of times we would just take the Metro bus, you know, at 13 and 14 and go downtown and skate all day and then come back before the Metro closed at 11.
So in Midtown, the slabs, dude, was definitely a spot, a welcome, like, spot. And you could skate, and there'd be people there, and it'd be fun.
This is like shitty pool that I can't believe like people actually swim in, but there's no fence around it, so they drain it every day. It's not like a pool, it's like ledges and 3 blocks everywhere, and just it is just, we call it slabs because there's like a million different shapes and sizes of slabs of concrete just piled all on top of each other, and it's like a day one song dream.
I miss those things. Those were our skate parks.
Slabs, man, when we were like 96, like that was the secret Sunday spot. Was the slabs.
I remember Westport Middle, my friend Brett Crommuller likes to say that he's the first one to wax it, so that's his spot. When they added the 4 stair in front, because I bet you that school was already there, but they added what we still skate today, if you can.
It was a middle school that shut down, so it was abandoned, and it was like the harshest brick ground, but it was never a bust, so they had all these like little ledges and like these hubbas that were like this tall down like 4 blocks. You can sloppy no slide them. Had this like 6 stair dumb rail. It was super tall, super short.
I don't know, I just think the demos keep people sparked, especially, I mean, Kansas City and the whole Midwest, you know, flyover states or whatever. It's pretty rad that we've been as lucky as we have, that pretty much every year there's a demo, and like you said, people are driving in from Springfield, St. Louis, Omaha, whatever, because they're not stopping in those towns, you know, like, I mean, that's kind of a privilege, and a lot of kids might not even realize that. They just think this is normal, you know? Yeah, I mean, KC, it's like smack dab in the middle, you know? And it is kind of one of those things where the more you do them, the more these companies, you're on their radar, so they'll hit you up next time, you know, or another company that hasn't been through.
A lot of all the demos, we're all going to Escapist, and Escapist was doing such a good job with all that. I didn't really want to go that direction because it's already going on, and why not do something else that's kind of like not going on, and trying to do like a couple, you know, big events that really like highlighted the fun aspect. And I think just giving back and making the kids stoked is like the best The first years of Battle of the Boxes, it was mostly people our age, like our friends, you know, a lot of the Escapist team and Ride Forever team. Not a lot of kids, not a lot of beginners. And as we've grown, it's been really cool to see, like, you know, there was 30 beginner kids. And those kids have the most fun, and they're the most stoked and so appreciative. And I think those kids are the future, and trying to get them hyped and get future kids involved, that's the stuff that's gonna help the skate scene.
And then Street League was like a big thing, obviously. It's like having that high caliber of a contest come to such a small Midwest town. I think just for the scene in general, like, people got psyched. You know, a lot of people that didn't really know about skating or didn't really take, not skaters, but like random people that really didn't take skating serious, to see it on that level, I think opened up people's eyes in the city. And just from me being here, hometown, because a lot of other people in the contest are from Los Angeles, I think bringing like kind of that almost like home court advantage perspective into it, I think helped Street League and helped Kansas City both.
I think another big thing, just a big pinnacle moment I remember, was just at that time that Street League donated the expansion stuff to Penn Valley and what that did.
They donated the obstacles of the park to Penn Valley to finish off the square. So now that like a third of the park isn't missing anymore, it's all like done.
Just to see cities start to embrace it and go, you know, this would be cool to put tax dollars into, you know, parks and make some decent parks.
Here's the thing, it's kind of an evolution. You know, Bonsai had come and gone, Rolling Magic had come and gone shortly after that. Then there was a dry spell, and then attitudes in the country changed as far as outdoor recreation. Kansas City was trying to do that, but more on a local, individual basis in all these towns. And so I think what happened was the attitudes changed. It's finally come around, but I remember we heard Pleasant Valley was going to get built, and we skated the shit out of that. And then that was a dry spell, and then all of a sudden, boom, parks started happening in Independence, and then Prairie Village, a lot of them in Overland Park over there, Indian Trails, and finally Penn Valley was the one that was really the one we were looking forward to seeing and skating.
It's kind of cool seeing skaters take things into their own hands a little bit. You know, I was like really proud of where the scene is going. Like the Harrison Street DIY is epic. It's awesome. It's like skaters built that. Like that is like, when I go there, I see that and I'm like, this is cool for like the world, not just Kansas City. It's just like something that, you know, most skate scenes can't do. And I think that's really rad.
I've seen the progression. I've seen even the younger kids get now holding down the scene a little bit. People like to move here. I see that a lot. Like they migrate here and call this home. And when you come and stay, like I've seen professional skateboarders come to KC and skate, and they're like, man, like I had no idea this is what it was like.
There's some kids out there, huh? Sean McKay, Josh Barclay, like, we always, you know, there's always hometown heroes anywhere you go. You know what I'm saying? Dude, and there's that kid, Zach Doling. He was from around here. I like to say he's Sam Dutzel's protege, but only because they were both from Independence. Like, oh, Sam must have taught him at a young age. Look how good he is.
You know, I can see it through online and social media, like how everyone's blowing up and how there's so many good people in Kansas City, and it's mind-blowing how good everyone's getting so quickly. So it's definitely a good thing to see where it's gone. And you know, Kansas City is it's on the map now as a solid skateboard community, and it hasn't always been seen that way.
You know, I think people were catching wind outside of Kansas City that like, what's up with all these like dudes in Kansas City that are just stoked and they're partying, they're having like such a good time, you know, and they're making these awesome videos, and man, those guys are inspiring, you know, like I feel like that's not something that happens overnight.
It's just so rad, like, everybody in the scene is kind of looking out for each other. I think like everybody's hyped on each other. I'm not seeing a vibe. It's pretty rad. It was rad that Sean stayed here, that he didn't move out, and he helped cultivate it.
Like I'll go to like Penn Valley. Like I don't even like Penn Valley, but I like going there just for the scene, like just to see like, look at these kids that are so fucking good nowadays. Like holy shit, there's so much talent in this city right now, and I think largely part to, you know, parks. There were never parks whenever I was a kid, and like the internet.
The scene here is so like tight knit. Like everyone is cool with each other, and like that's what you kind of have to do that when you're from a town like Kansas City, because it's, you know, there's not a lot of room. It's like everyone has to like work together, and like things don't come as easy here.
You know, it all comes back to, you know, having great places to skate and great places to meet other skaters, and just being able to like open up the, you know, the whole metro area.